I'm Mary McCarthy with Avesta GTM here with my co-host, Kyle Daghighi. I'm coming to you from Boston. Kyle is in Minneapolis, and we're super excited about the show. Kyle, say hello to our audience.
Well, hello. Sorry about the slight delay. Blame it on Riverside. So,
We did not have the automated workflow set up properly for Riverside.
I mean, it's a very friendly chat, so it's okay. It happens. No problem. That's actually more fun. You get to chat with the guests a little bit. So,
Absolutely.
I'm Kyle. Yeah, I'm a DevOps engineer, and I recently joined Avesta GTM to help GTM teams build better automation systems. And I'm thrilled to have Chris Smith and Hayley Brodeur here
I'm
with
so
us today.
glad we got the tech issues worked out because we are so happy to have these guests. But I want to tell the audience, first of all, that workflow automations is the working title for this. It's a mouthful, but there's a reason we didn't say like AI agents and agentic workflows in the title, because we want to really get like beyond the hype and the reality and show that all that talk that pretty much everyone on LinkedIn and everywhere else is talking about with AI agents and agentic workflows, it's really just about automating your work. And so sometimes you need AI, sometimes you don't. And so Kyle knows a lot about this. He builds the workflows for us, and our guests are like deep in this and all aspects of like everything from startups to enterprise level. So let's dive in and let's hear from them. Chris, why don't you first of all introduce yourself? You're at AWS. Tell us what you do there and anything else you want to tell people about yourself.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Mary. I appreciate you having me on the show. Really excited to be here. Yeah, my name is Chris Smith. I'm a solution architect at AWS. Been there for about 6 years. I've also worked with startups. I've worked for VMware and IBM. Really, my background isn't really in automation, not really the data scientist part. But right now at AWS, I really work helping customers understand agents and how to implement agents in a real way. And of course, it's not specific to any one model. So lots of our customers really want to use a variety of models. And so my job is to understand how to bring different models together with different frameworks to be successful in implementing agentic systems. So really excited to be here.
Awesome. Yeah. And you're coming to us from Texas, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. And then Hayley is in Connecticut, an East Coaster like me. Hayley, tell us where you work, what you do, and then we'll dive into the heart of this workflow stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the director of sales for Alsyio.ai. We are a startup that is helping companies solve these silos that can happen in go-to-market by connecting them to a revenue-specific LLM to better help you find your unrecognized revenue, gaps in deals, and basically just understanding holistically what's going on with your go-to-market data, as opposed to going into Salesforce to see a dashboard that sort of just told you what happened. Alsyio will tell you what's happening today and what you can do to make those outcomes even that much better, because basically help you control the uncontrollable in sales. I'm super excited to be here. So excited to be here along Chris, as well as you, Mary and Kyle. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Yeah, we can't wait to hear from you. All right. Let's start with sort of a broader perspective, a bit of a I don't want to say historic, but like an industry-wide perspective. Kyle, why don't you dive in with the first question?
Okay, sure. Sounds good. I guess, Chris, we can start with you, given your extended background in automation and, working at big names like AWS and IBM. Where do you see the industry going? Like, what do you see, what has changed with like AI coming into automation? Do you see because there's a lot of hype, obviously, when there's a new technology coming out, there's always a lot of hype. People talk about random things that sometimes may not be so true. So where do you see things has changed with AI built into some of these automation and workflows?
Yeah. I think it's a really good question, and I'm going to kind of flip it around, and I'm going to talk first about, what stayed the same, because you're right. There's, a lot of hype. There's a lot of information, some good, some bad. I think the most important thing is, first and foremost, we need to recognize that automation has always been disruptive, right? Every wave of automation over the past 50 years has caused some level of disruption. The greater the advancement, the greater the disruption. I think once we really kind of realize that, that we've been through this before, that it's going to settle, we're going to be able to, to do the things that we've done, it's going to relieve some of the angst we see around AI workflow automation, right? It's just another level of automation. Yes, it's going to be disruptive, but we've been through it. I think the the key thing, though, is focusing on what some of the tried and true techniques that we've used for automation over the past few years, or the past iterations of automation. I really see a lot of people falling into one of two camps, right? One is one group, they want to use AI for everything. I call this kind of the overfitting group, right? They kind of want to use it. Like I got a new hammer, I want to go ahead, everything's a nail. The other group is kind of stuck in analysis paralysis, right? They're trying to find that perfect use case, or they're trying to wait until the tech stops moving. I think both of these approaches kind of contribute to what they call the trough of disillusionment from Gartner, right? Because I think they frequently fail. I think the best approach is really to be pragmatic about this and use the techniques and learnings and best practice that we've applied to automation over the past few years. I'll give some examples. Don't automate things that you do once or infrequently. I think it's really important to focus on business value, right? Look where others have been successful, iterate on that, put your own spin on it. But, it's a good starting point to say what things are working. Offering bounties on automation candidates, because then you get your workforce involved into identifying the best way to be impactful, right? And at the end of the day, if it's not actually saving someone significant time or enabling them to do something that they couldn't do before, it's probably not the best candidate.
Right.
When you're evaluating these cases, be careful that you're not using AI to do things that you could easily do with other traditional approaches, right? AI by definition is non-deterministic. It's always going to introduce a little bit of error in the system, and this error can be compounded as you get things more complex. So if a problem can be solved using deterministic rules, don't use AI. Right? Most real world solutions are going to compromise at both deterministic steps and AI agents. It's going to be a hybrid. So don't try to do one or the other.
You made a lot.
Yep.
I'm going to stop there because you made a lot of wonderful points there. So I just to go back a little bit, you mentioned some use cases. Given the fact that you're in the Gen AI team at AWS, you're probably seeing a lot of these bleeding edge use cases. So what are some of the use cases that you see that actually like the workflow with AI in production is producing like good value or some sort of value?
Yeah, I mean, so the best use cases are the ones that are typically procedural, non-deterministic, requires a lot of human involvement. Typically, are the ones. As I mentioned, you really want things that are going to save people time, or going to allow them to do something they couldn't do before, right? So there's a lot of examples in GTM, and I'm going to let Hayley speak to the GTM side because that's really her wheelhouse, right? But outside of that, there's things around like document processing. Where you need to be able to extract the right information and make decisions based on data. Data is key to being able to use cases. So you want procedural, non-deterministic things that require, data processing. I've also see things around customer service augmentation, where they're not really replacing agents, but making these jobs much easier with personalized information, doing pre-churn detection, doing resolution. I see a lot of uptick in regulated industries like healthcare and finance, where it takes humans many hours to prepare very specific documents for compliance and approval. And AI can do this reliably in minutes. So these are these examples, but I honestly think we're just starting to see the breadth of things that can be automated. And, kind of as I was talking about before, if you're in analysis paralysis, don't be afraid to experiment, because you're going to find that there's a lot of things that you can do. And if you experiment, you're going to be able to kind of, move toward the goal of in a production deployment, and you're going to be able to build that organizational experience that you need to be able to kind of stay relevant.
I know a lot of what I've seen with like initial experimentation out there is that because you can do kind of cool things with these agentic workflows, you end up with a solution in search of a problem, right? Like this can do this amazing thing, but it's not really something that necessarily a team needs. Like, so why are we spending time and money on it, even if it looks kind of magical and awesome? So the things to avoid. Hayley, you're a sales director, but you're also building your own workflows, right? And I've seen you do it at multiple startups. So what do you see, say, for like a sales team of any size nowadays with the technology, whether they're building agentic workflows or just more traditional automated workflows? What are sort of the must automate things that should be in place for a sales team?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked this question, Mary, because it's evolved for me quite a bit, to to be honest, and I think it would actually shock Chris to know that I'm no longer using AI to write email follow-ups. I used to. I don't anymore. I think it's it helps me to write out the actual steps, and gives my own personal touch of language that I felt wasn't being mimicked very well with AI generated follow-ups. I felt like that didn't really take my personal style. And again, I think that building relationships in GTM, specifically if you're selling AI, is crucial right now. And so for me, I see every single piece of my interaction with a customer as it needs to be me. And that's kind of how I feel about it. It has shifted quite a bit since the beginning of when I started using AI, because, you know, you could go look at my LinkedIn. It says a million things of how I use it and why I use it. And I'm proud of being an AI powered seller, but I'm using it for things that don't have to do with customer facing things. I'm no longer writing LinkedIn posts with AI anymore. I want it to be genuinely me. Um, because I was like, I don't want anyone coming from it. If anyone was to go back, you could definitely find AI posts that were generated.
And now we can all identify those. So
no, yeah, you can definitely identify them. And so, like, I'm not going to say I never did it. I really never used AI for outbound messaging, and that has not changed. I feel the same way in that sense. For me, what I'm using it for is research, company like research, planning, lead lookalikes, right? Like this use case is working really well for this particular customer. And I want to find a company that looks just like it. I want to find my exact champion in that company, right? So that's what Alsyio and other AI products give me. I have done, since using Alsyio, I don't have to scrape 10Ks as earnings calls or anything like that anymore, because it does it for me. But what I did build an agent for when that functionality wasn't in our product was I actually went on to Zapier and I used their beta agent feature. And I created one that would show me, like, as I was going into a call, it was a public company, it scraped the latest earnings call and kind of gave me the highlights of it. Because for me as an enterprise seller, I see that as a cheat sheet into what my prospects are thinking about. So like going into calls,
having an agent like that you've set up, or a workflow, can that replace an SDR or
no?
Interesting. Yeah.
It's going to be really, really.
No, we want honesty, because again, we're not here to boost the agentic or AI stuff. Like, if the reality is these workflows can get us to a certain degree of progress, but we think we still need a human SDR there.
For sure. I mean, we have like AI powered SDRs, right? Like, I mean, even my little brother, who I'm extremely proud of, has entered the startup AI workforce. He was a founding SDR at a company called Singulate. Check them out. They're doing amazing things in marketing. But what I love about what he's doing is he's using AI to help him get the research on the actual prospect, but he writes the email, or Alsyio gives him a template and then he continues to write the email. So it's like, it's the human in the loop piece. And I know that like Chris is big on this as well. It's like having the human in the loop because of those non-deterministic actions is great. And it's not this very high stakes, like, oh, well, AI is running my entire business. Like, okay, Salesforce, that's not, I wouldn't want it to run my whole business, right? It's like, what can it automate for me now? And how can it help with those very specific things that can make me better customer facing? But I'm not going to do anything customer facing with AI. I don't think at this point.
Absolutely. Yeah. The workflows that you're building, Kyle's been building in N8N, and it's really a lot of that pre-work, the lead enrichment and all that. It's quite repetitive. You can pull the data, but then building it up to hand off to an AE or whoever is going to
exactly. Yeah. So exactly.
Beginning to end.
There needs to be a workflow for that. Like I even with some workflows that I've built, it's even how many pages of information do you want about the client, right? Like, and I'm like, I want the first 3. Like, I definitely don't want Google on Google page. That's where you're going to have the hallucinations. And so I think, again, putting guardrails around it, building automations the way that Chris and Kyle did, where, it's something where you can get a lot of information and a lot of ground covered on the task, but you're going to put the finishing touches on it to make absolutely certain that it reflects well on you as well as the business.
Absolutely. Chris, so in your role, you're seeing what's happening across, like Kyle, Hayley, and I are more like in startup world, even though we've worked in different size companies, but you're seeing like the real spectrum of what's happening on the enterprise level as well. Let's say, as an example, on the enterprise level, what's the kind of the level of maturity you're seeing with all this? Because it is, I imagine, still a certain amount of experimentation.
Yeah, I mean, so it's interesting. So yes, there is certainly still an amount of experimentation. I find that there are the workflows, for example, are becoming a traditional mix of both automation and AI, right? Because as I mentioned before, if you're trying to do everything with AI, it's non-deterministic, and you can kind of compound any amount of error that you get. So picking the right tool for the job, so it kind of a hybrid. Most good workflows are going to be kind of a hybrid between the two. But what I do see is, that we're seeing a lot more, move to production. I think that the biggest issue that I'm seeing with customers is, one, that in terms of maturity, it's really about two different factors. One is understanding that the LLM is not the center of the world, right? It's not the only thing that this goes. It's incredibly important, right? But there's so many other moving parts to this. There's things, agents, vector stores, embedding models, frameworks, data pipelines, tools, all of that, right? So where the enterprises are really working is when they understand it's not just about the model, it's about the ecosystem around the model. That's the first kind of maturity point that I'm seeing. And the second one is, okay, now I've got something and I'm trying to turn it in production. How do I get that in production? It's incredibly difficult when you think about putting things in production. You have to deal with scalability, reliability, security, explainability, serviceability, and performance. Right. And so the second maturity inflection point is really around those particular things. And so what I'm seeing is that customers want open frameworks. They want to be able to, they don't want to have to select a model. They don't want to be locked into a model, right? They want to be able to select all the models, multiple frameworks, but still have a centralized governance point for a well architected infrastructure. They want to democratize this as much as possible. So this is where I'm seeing where they're kind of moving beyond experimentation because they need to move in production, but they struggle with getting things into production because there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of complexity there, and they need to be able to be able to handle all of those things. So to answer your question, that's where I think enterprises are. They're outside of experimentation, but they struggle to get things in production.
And do you see there? I mean, I think we're all seeing sort of the growing awareness around the limitations of the LLM itself, right? The fact that there was so much hype initially, but now once you try to get it into these deterministic agentic workflows, it's it's like having a naughty toddler or something there instead of like the robot that you can depend on, right? To a certain degree.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because one of the things that you want to be able to do is break down things into more specialized agents. Because when you break things down into specialized agents, it's a lot easier to put those guardrails around the agent because it has a much smaller scope of responsibility. So that's where I'm seeing, to your point, if you're trying to get like one model to rule them all and do things in a holistic manner, it's usually not as successful as if you create multi-agentic systems where you have specialized models. It allows you to really focus your scope, which allows you to control your security and reduce your hallucinations. So that's kind of where I'm seeing that because, at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that you have to fine tune everything because you don't actually want to do that. You can start with specific RAG databases and customized prompts and see where it goes from there. But it is important to have specialized models because it does give you a lot more flexibility in how you put the parts together to build successful systems.
I have a question that none of us discussed beforehand, so it's fine if nobody has the answer, but I want the answer. We can search for this afterwards. So when we talk about agentic workflows and AI, we've all said like one of the best use cases is potentially going to be customer success and customer service, and like it's going to make things, information and responses, so much easier, so much faster. Has anyone, like not in the course of their work, but in their real life, experienced a company where like customer service seems to have markedly improved thanks to this? Because I can give multiple examples of like massive companies that had decent customer service And now it's gone into what feels like agentic hell when you try to reach out. One of them is IKEA. I won't say the other one. Where this is actually for now, and whatever stage the technology is in, it's been a step backwards. But do you guys know of examples where this is actually working?
I do. I can't name names,
Yeah.
but I have a very specific one. And the quote that I will say is, "It was easier to write agents to do this than it was to train 1,500 people on a new system."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they have been very successful and their CSAT scores have actually improved, right? So
And it's been in prod for a while. Like if that's working in prod even for a week,
it is working in prod, yes. So there are examples. I think it's really key that you approach it correctly, though. Again, you don't want to just burn down the house and go for it, right? I think part of the issue is getting good feedback on how things are going and using that in a loop to be able to improve the system. And I'll be honest, that's a big gap in the industry, right? One of the things that we're not doing a very good job of is model evals. So I see that as something that something that we're going to that's going to become a bigger focus as we move into the next year for sure.
Okay, so I can hold out hope for the future of humanity because of that.
Yeah.
I would say I've also seen it work well with like the human in the loop piece of it in the more B2B settings, and like the text. So I know, Mary, you're kind of more referring to like the little circle that we now have on every website, right? Where it's like use AI and you just say person, representative enough times that they'll actually connect you to a person.
Right.
But I have seen it work the way that Chris was saying before. So I have heard good experiences with that previously in production. But I think it's who's training the models, honestly, on the other side, and like the series of system prompts that you have underneath that, or the agents and where they're getting the information from, making sure that vector database is clean, that kind of thing, in terms of like product, information, things like that. We've seen it work well where customer success folks have been handed over like a tech engagement, and they need to get all the information about the champion. The person signing the contract may not be the person that they're now interfacing and servicing. So it's like, getting all the information from pre-sales to today. And even if like a renewals manager was to pick it up and say, okay, I know exactly what's happened with this account from start to finish. Because I think as a customer, for me, what becomes more annoying and becomes more clear to me is when customer service, the people, representatives ask me questions that I already answered to someone else. And that's where everyone gets annoying, gets really upset. And that's like where the agents start to fail, is like, I already answered that, right? Even when I've done all the pre-work with the agent and then, I'm on the line with the person and I'm like, I just answered all these questions. Do you not have that in like the interface, right? Because I know how it works. I'm doing my time, whatever through it. So I think, again, having the human in the loop and saying, this is the customer, this is all the information, the data that we have on them. This has been the interaction from start to finish, is a great way to leverage AI. A great way. Yeah.
So I just want to comment on that because, first of all, that's obviously not an AI problem, because I know how many times I've had to repeat myself to humans as I get transferred to your point, right? But I will say that this is one of the things that, we're talking about things in the industry that customers are trying to solve. And one of them was, as I mentioned, trying to move things in production. The other one that I'm seeing that's pretty universal is directly to your point, Mary. It's memory, right? To make agents really smart and connect with people, it's important that they retain that long-term information, that context, from session to session. And so there is a lot of work going on with long-term memory to understand how we take short-term memory and be able to create what we call episodic strategies, and being able to extract just the right information from conversations and store that for later use, right? So, there are already some strategies around user preferences and semantic search that are out there, but there's a lot of questions. And I get, like what data, how do we determine what data is interesting? How do we organize the data? How do we expire it? What happens when we get conflicting information, between different sessions? How do we handle those collisions? These are all things that are actually going on in the industry right now with companies that are trying to implement agents, because the problem that you guys just hit on is a fairly universal problem, and they're trying to be able to make that where an agent can remember you and remember the previous conversations in a way that even a human can't do very well.
It's incredible. What do you think of all that, Kyle?
Well, I think that you may want to push that Kyle rant button right now, because I'm gonna.
If I can find it, we've had a lot of technical problems. Okay. I don't know if I can.
So
start the rant, and I'll decide if it's a rant or not.
Yeah, I mean, even like I like to zoom out, right? Not just go into, oh, can we retrain this model or make sure the model has memory? I want to zoom out on the operation side, right? Because I use this phrase a lot, and Mary knows I call it a Mickey Mouse operation. That's like usually a company that it's tribal knowledge all around, right? To Hayley's point that, the customer has to re-explain themselves like 5 times to the director of sales, to the AE, to the customer success person, to XYZ, to everybody who's in support and interacting with them. And that in itself creates, like you lose credibility. And once you lose credibility on an account, it's dead in the water for at least 12 months. To personas over there refresh, they go up the ladder and whatnot. And like there's a lot going on in there. So I always look at things like, okay, we put some AI agents here, but did we solve the fundamental problem of having an end-to-end system that we exactly know, okay, this is how I enrich the leads, and then this ends in a sale? Did we learn something from this loop? And then you do what Mary was calling lead attribution, right? We go back and like, okay, where the hell did this lead come from? Can we copy this process? Can we use it in production in our go-to-market strategy over and over again? Can we teach these to new hires? So to me, like that entire go-to-market strategy becomes like really asking questions about, okay, what do you have right now? What are the gaps? And if you answer those questions, then you can place a couple of AI agents here and there to make the process.
In that end-to-end GTM workflow, which Hayley, and you've worked on all parts of it, really, I would say at least 5 spots in there, you do need a human in the loop, right? Like it's even no matter how much of it you're automating, or no matter how good your tools are.
We have an interesting conversation about this because we did a customer success webinar actually, and I learned so much from the experts that we had. And what they talked about was the human in the loop piece, but also like how much are you spending with this company? Like, is this like a hair product that I had to fall and now I got to deal with like some AI automation right when I go through it, but it was like a $40 bottle of hair gel, right? Very different when you've spent $500,000 on a technology that, is meant for your workforce and is supposed to be solving a particular use case. Because again, I know everything that goes into that is like, what's the use case? What's the ROI? What are we going to get? How do we know that we were successful? All those things, right? And then you could fumble all of that on the handoff to CS, and we don't have AI readily available to be able to help with that. I mean, I just think that's so unacceptable at this point. Like, and people move on. Someone could be fired, they go to another job, something happens, and all of a sudden, like your $500,000 flagship customer is sitting on a call with someone who they don't know and is asking them all the same questions that they were asked way back in discovery when they first came on because they don't have the context. So putting that human in that, because I think that they should have a dedicated CSM, of course, for something at that large, right? Like how much are you spending? I mean, even down to like 50 grand, that's a lot for a lot of businesses. And they need to be able to have that kind of thing. And I think that this is a perfect way to not only automate CS, but make it better. So it's not, just, can AI replace customer success or customer support? It's how do we make it better with AI? I think that's more of like the question that should be asked. And I
raise the quality.
Human in the loop in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Hayley, I want to ask you, you obviously for a lot of your workflows, you're using the the tool of the company that you work at, Alsyio, but you also have to do some workflows beyond that. And like, how do you choose the tools that you use? Because one thing I've noticed in what the work that you do, like the tools you were using a year ago are very different from what they are now. Like it's all evolving. How do you know what to trust? Like again, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, everybody was using Zapier. Zapier is still good and it's updating to keep up with the AI trends, but obviously like there's new tools evolving all the time. Just some of your, you don't have to give away your playbooks, but give some helpful tips.
Yeah, I use a lot of things. I use a mishmash of things. Alsyio has definitely alleviated most of that for me, but I did use Zapier's beta agent feature because it was the path of least resistance. This whole note, because my full-time job is not to build automations, and my founder, I'm certainly not being judged on that, right? My founders know that I like to leverage certain tools and AI for my work, but certainly like they're not like, well, you know what, she built 3 automations this quarter, so she's good in our, no, they're going to look at what did that yield for us? You know what I mean? And so for me, I'm looking for the companies, because I love evaluating tools. I love all the free trials that are out there. I'm looking for free trials that will give me all of the features for the 7 to 14 days, because I don't know how I could judge something that was given to me like with limited functionality, and then be able to go back that up to my leadership of saying we should spend this money because if we turn this on, this is what's no. Show me what it's going to do for me right away, in this free trial, and I'm constantly reevaluating what is the best in class. But it's the path of least resistance for me because this isn't my day job, and I think that a lot of the tools that are available for sellers right now are half-baked products that need a go-to-market engineer to help kind of put them together. And I think that that's like where, I don't know, I see you guys being such a great resource for companies, because they should be leveraging this kind of thing, but you shouldn't have, your AEs building them. You know what I mean? And I think
it's different. Like most people can't wear both hats like you do. Yeah.
No, it's a lot. This is something I like doing in my spare time too. So there's a level of that, but I think automating, like meeting prep. Here's my calendar. Tell me all about this person. Give me a summary of their LinkedIn. Give me, a summary of the company. What are they focused on? Again, if that's ever public, I'm going to scrape the latest earnings call. Right. And, even like, look at my week from last week, look at my week this week. Where should I be focusing? What should I be focusing my time on? And when these agents have hooks into all of my world, so my data, my call recordings, my CRM, my everything, and those are the kind of automations that I was building in Zapier previously. That's when it understands me best and can prep me best and go to market. And I think that that's where you all have an incredible opportunity. So yeah, absolutely.
Kyle was dying to say something there.
Yeah,
go ahead. On the tools.
No. That I was just thinking. I always think about cost, right? When you create a new workflow, for example, you go to Claude and you say, hey, create XYZ in NA10 for me. You copy the JSON, upload the file, boom, you have a pretty workflow. But if you look at end to end of like that workflow, right? It's calling XYZ API, Hunter IO, this, that. And then at the end of the day, you're like, okay, I'm paying $50 for NA10 a month. And then all these other little API calls, and they all have their own throttling and rates and, plans and whatnot. You're looking at the $2,000 per month workflow, right? And then it's just running there. And like, that's not running lean, right? I don't like to have extra money, just certain companies I worked at in the past, and don't worry, they're not on my LinkedIn profile. There is like cluster running in production, nobody's using it, the like consumption is like 2%, but that whole setup is like $1.5 million a year, and they're happy that they got 50% discount for it. It's just like mind-blowing. You're like throwing $1.5 million into the trash can, and just you have a pretty cluster running over there. That
and
just
with these tools, the cost can
goes
be
against every fiber of my being. Yeah, like I like to run lean, not to nickel and dime, but like be frugal with your stack. If you don't have to, if you can do more research and save some dollars, especially in this market, why not? Like building workflows and just spending thousands of dollars on them. I don't know. Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we have to be careful, right? Because there was a time that I thought I would never shop online, that I had to touch things before I bought them, and now I buy everything online, right? So the reason I bring that up is because models are evolving. There's a lot of things changing, and to your point, Kyle, for efficiency, models can be tuned for efficiency. They're not inherently inefficient. So right now we have an expectation of what people do, and there's a human touch and all that. I think we have to be careful that we don't tunnel and say it always has to be this way, because I think we're going to find as this technology matures, there's some preconceived notions that we have that probably will go out the door. And I think the way to be successful is to be flexible, is to realize that might happen and to be able to kind of go with it. So I don't think there's any absolutes here, is really the moral of that story.
That's something that I'm so excited. Like the foundational model is getting better. I mean, that's where you'll see the full transformation. I truly feel, because for right now, like we are sitting here talking about, one of the first questions you asked, Chris, which is a great question, was like, what use cases are we using this for right now? Because I think we've all come to the general consensus that it can't be everything, and it's not ready for everything. And that's on a foundational model level. And I mean, it's only been a couple of years. So it's like, will this look like in a couple of years, and even a couple more years? And we might be talking about completely different use cases and laughing about the time that we talked about, using it in customer success, for example. Of course we're going to use it, from then on. I mean, I think every time a foundational model comes out, I'm so excited to test it, try it out, see what's different about it. I don't know, Chris, that's how I feel about that. I'm very excited to see it continue to advance.
Yeah, it is. And I think again, the challenge is to be open-minded, but also not try to use it for everything. To your point, I see that way too much. Everybody wants to use it for every single task, and it just doesn't make sense. But you should also realize that it can probably do a lot more than you think it can do, even without fine tuning. I also see that a lot, where people want to fine tune. It's like, models have gotten so good that you can just do prompt engineering and get 90% of what you want to get done. And then if you bring in a specialized data set, you don't need to fine tune everything. And so I just think there's a lot of advancement, and I know I don't know where it's going to go 100%. And so I'm kind of wait and see. Let's see where it goes.
As the resident skeptic, I'll just throw in my prediction that the progress in the foundational models hasn't been linear, and won't for some time will not be linear. It'll be more,
exponential or flat? Is that what you're saying?
More up and down.
Yeah. Cyclic. Yeah.
I think like real transformative progress in the foundational models, I think we're a few years off from, but
it's AI in general, right? If you look at AI, you look at AI, we had, multiple AI winters. I think it's certainly going to plateau at some point. But then, no one can predict when the next big thing's going to happen. So
yeah.
I think Chris also touched on such a good point about the prompting, because, this was something that I was so fortunate that I have so many people around me that taught me how to prompt. They know who they are. Chris is one of them. Mm-hmm. And it's everything. And I use this example because it's such a simple example.
We're going to have to get your brother on, because you've been talking about him.
This is a different brother, actually. Oh. This is the older brother. He works for Fidelity. But he calls me every week because we discuss his fantasy lineup. I'm a big NFL fan, so I know a good amount of what's going on in the league, whatever else. And so I was like, hey, just download Perplexity, which is a tool that I like to use. And I said, give it your entire roster, and it'll give you a good lineup based on the matchups, whatever. And he was like, I'm getting conflicting results with this. But I was like, okay, well, what did you ask it? And, it was like, who should I play this week? And it gave, very, very limited information. I was like, yeah. Okay, so lesson in prompting, here we go. I was like, give it your entire, I was like, it's good. This is going to take a while, but do you want a good lineup or not? And I was like, give it your entire roster. Tell it you need to maximize the amount of what is the goal? what's the goal of what you're doing? Like, make sure you tell it what the goal is so that it's able to know that. And you're saying, look at injury reports, look at matchups. Don't look at last year, because like Perplexity could be pulling in a report from 2024 when they're not hurt and perfectly fine, and it's going to tell you to play them, right? Like, it's like he solved it all with one prompt. It took him longer to write it, but he got the better result that he wanted. And I think that that's sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, writing a background for this prompt every time is a pain, whatever. You're going to get a better result. So you're either spending the time getting irritated with bad responses, or you can write one great prompt to begin with, and it has all the context that it needs.
So like whether we're all automating workflows or whether we're just working with the models, it's kind of this, I think this is one of the terms you've used, Hayley. We need like an AI-enabled education across the board, probably.
Yes, I do. I do think that
whether it's for our work or for our fantasy football league.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, I like to share that example because it's such an easy example. It's not about like business at all. But I said, like, I was like, yeah, you're not going to get what you want out of it. You didn't ask it correctly. Yeah. You know what I mean?
We will ask you on the record if he brought those learnings to Fidelity and is playing around there with
that. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to ask him.
You guys, we're way over time, but I have one last question for each of you before we close out the show. Going to jump back to Chris. Big question to cram into 60 seconds, Chris, but do your best. Sort of like a year from now, what challenges do you see companies facing? Or like, in other words, what should companies be doing now in order to be really doing this right a year from now? Because the reality is, I think even companies say that have agentic AI automations in prod, it's early days for them too. It's early days for everyone. So what should people be doing now?
Yeah, I mean, I could do a whole episode on that, Mary. I'll be honest with you. So I'll just try to be brief, right? So, I think we're going to get a lot more focus on security, things, prompt injection, jailbreaking, memory poisoning. We're going to see a lot more of those. One of the things that I've been working on is around tool chaining, identity passing with tool chaining. That's when you have an agent that calls another agent, that calls a series of tools, right? You lose the principle of the identity of who was the original caller, and you need to be able to do that for fine-grained access control and things like human in the loop that we've been talking about so much, right? If you don't know who the human is, right? How do you know whether that person needs to be authenticated? So being able to do identity through tool chaining is a big one. I think that's going to, so 3LO flows are going to be big on that. And I could go into that in a lot of detail, but I won't here. And the other I kind of touched on earlier was around evaluations. Right now we're doing evaluations kind of on end-to-end evaluations. We're doing it kind of out of band. I'm seeing a shift to that and actually collecting real data, looking at the evaluations of each individual steps and doing something around what I call continuous alignment. So actually having the system learn as it's being used, learning from real data and real users. There's a big gap in evaluation frameworks for models in general. And this is something I think that we're going to see a lot more of. Once we solve the current issues of getting things in production and memory and execution environments, I think these are some of the things that are going to emerge. So again, I could do a whole show on that, but that's at a pretty 30,000-foot level.
Amazing. Yeah. And we'll do a separate episode on each of those, right?
Yes. We should bring Chris back because I have a lot of more questions now.
I know. I can see you percolating there.
Yes.
Hayley, last question for you. You're somewhat self-taught when it comes to like building GTM workflows. Obviously not every, head of sales or sales director is like building them in their own company. But say for a company that can't hire a Kyle to come in as a GTM engineer, where should a sales leader like learn about how to at least get started building some workflows or at least experiment? Like, what are some good resources you can recommend?
Without recommending my own company. I would say
I can recommend your own company.
But besides that, because I think that for me, Mary, with sales leaders and with salespeople in general, and I know like you and I have even talked about like how to break into AI and tech into things like that. I would just say be an AI enabled seller. Show, that you understand the basics of how it works. Because again, you probably, if you're in sales and this is like the career, you're going to be in tech for a while and this is the career you want, I'm sure that companies in the future will have, if you're not selling AI now, you will in the future. And it will be so important for you to learn how it works. So I would recommend getting like a basic subscription, whether that's to a regular AI interface, whether that's Alsyio or Perplexity or ChatGPT, whatever it is, and just start asking it questions and understanding like, where is it pulling that data from? Okay, that's where I should try. Like, I'm even noticing when there's hallucinations now with some of these main models, because it happens all the time. ChatGPT, Anthropic, Perplexity constantly hallucinates for me, and I'm like, that's not right. I know that's not right, and you're being able to even like call that out. And just use it for really basic things so that you understand, how it populates, how fast is it, what is it good at, what I've found that it's not good at, and just get a really basic understanding of it. Because with what Chris said about the analysis paralysis, I think a lot of people are back kind of in that stage where it's like, oh, I don't want it to mess anything up. I don't want it to mess up my workflow. Like I'm worried about that. You'll never be able to use it if you think it's going to be 100% bulletproof all the time, because it's never going to be, because of those non-deterministic actions that Chris was mentioning. So
I love that.
Yeah, I would just start small.
Yeah, and that's what I'm sort of hearing is maybe automating your own workflows is too big of a jump for most people. Become super AI literate just by playing around with experimenting with the tools, and then maybe in 3 months
Absolutely.
come back and learn some workflows from you.
Absolutely. The rest will come. I would start because I don't feel that, because I sell, and I've seen a lot of it where I'm like, even in my own tool, I'm like, okay, you asked 130 questions in one thread. Like, that's not going to work because you're taking the context from the thread above and it's getting very confused. You know what I mean? So it's like, even just understanding like chats work and the way that those work, right? Like, and the way it thinks, is where I would start. And then you can go into building your own automations within an 8N tool, or, I used Zapier because that's what I knew and was the past least resistance for me. But I definitely...
We're not sponsored by anybody, but we are.
Not nothing sponsored. I've mentioned a lot of tools, but I'm not sponsored for any of them. And it's I think it's just getting like the basics of understanding it, because I wouldn't go away from it because you're scared of it. That's the only thing that I'm seeing happen that I would caution against, is like, run towards it because it's not going away. Learn about it so that you're not so scared of it. Does that make sense?
And I would add, right, that one is that people that if you need 100% accuracy, maybe AI isn't the right tool,
yes.
Right? And and also you have to recognize that humans make mistakes too, right? So if you have a human doing it today,
speak for yourself.
Well, okay, that's a good point. But most humans, except Mary, aren't 100% accurate. So you have to kind of take that into account when you're evaluating the system. I think too many people are expecting 100% accuracy, and then they go, well, have a human do it. Well, a human's not 100% accurate either, except for Mary.
Right.
So
yeah, it's like the cars. I'm happy in one of the self-driving cars, like much lower level of error.
I mean, Chris is still gonna drive the Porsche. I'm gonna still drive a Corvette. We're not driving. I want to ask one more question from both of you. Are you guys going to reInvent?
I am, of course. So yes, I'm going, and I certainly invite anybody to go. All the stuff that I talked about and far more is going to be there at reInvent. Everything around, like I talked about, memory, secure runtime environments. We talked about, tool chaining, eval frameworks, policy management across agents. All those very relevant topics are all going to be part of reInvent. So I certainly would invite anybody to come. And if you go, just drop me a line, and I'd love to sync up and chat.
Awesome.
Yeah, I guess I asked that question because I just saw that Bedrock also has like some sort of agent builder now, or
are you talking about Agent Core? Or are you talking about Quick Suite?
Yeah, Agent Core. Yeah, that's what it's called. There's so many.
Yeah.
We can take a couple more minutes to go into it. If you guys both have time, Hayley and Chris, you're good on time? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine on time. Sure. Yep. Yeah, so Agent Core isn't an agent builder. It's a set of primitives that are runtimes to allow. It's an easy button for running agents. If you guys remembered earlier, I talked about one of the big challenges is customers need to move from POC to production. So if anybody has actually ever tried to write OAuth 2 around an agent, it's not an easy task. So what Agent Core allows you to do is it's a runtime. So it is serverless, so you can run your agents. Doesn't require that you modify the code, except for you may have to add one decorator for an agent. But it allows you to run agents and MCP servers in a very scalable, secure platform. So it automatically wraps OAuth or SigV4 around your agents, gives you the ability to incorporate memory if you want, gives you the ability to incorporate Lambda or external APIs as tools. So it has a number of primitives, we call them, 7 of them. You can mix and match and use whichever ones you want. But the purpose of Agent Core is to enable you to go from concept into production very easily. It's the easy button for moving agents into production. Love to chat more about it when we get a chance, but that's the high level.
Yes, absolutely. We'll definitely invite you back to the show. Like, this is very, very fun and interesting. I love it. How about you, Hayley? Is Alsyio sending you guys to reInvent too?
And if not, what's up next for Alsyio, or what's your coming up next for you guys?
Coming up next, I would say we are releasing scheduled prompts pretty soon. So that will be, being able to ask a question at a certain time and then getting either an alert or going into the app and being able to see, like if it's my Monday morning prep or so, I can now schedule that.
Nice.
So it's all in there for me when I log in. So that's kind of what we are moving towards, or are releasing pretty soon here. So we're very excited about that. But I wouldn't be surprised if we were going to reInvent. It's just not something that I have off the top of my head now. But, as I find out, I'll let you all know, because I will definitely be hitting up Chris for some more advice and tips. Absolutely. Would hope to see Chris at reInvent.
Absolutely, cool. For sure.
Anyway, this was supposed to be 30 minutes. I warned Chris this would probably go way over, and we did, because he had so much to say. Super interesting conversation, to me, fascinating, because it went beyond the hype. Like it didn't get into. I feel like we offered a lot of sort of warnings and cautions around this stuff, even though you guys are all about it. It shows that again, it's still like the super early days. Anyway, I learned a ton from both of you. I assume you did, Kyle, as well, unless you knew it all already.
There's always, no matter how much you know, there's always something that Chris Smith can tell you that you never knew before.
Yes, and
I think that goes for everyone. So it's not just me. If you're not learning, then something's wrong.
You're extremely humble, Chris.
But this tech, if you stop learning for like a month, you're behind. Like in marketing, Everything has moved ahead so fast that if you don't get on board, and with my skepticism, it makes me not want to get on board. But I've realized you have to.
If you stop learning, you should just retire. That's my advice. So there you go. So
yeah,
absolutely.
Like you can never stay steady. You either go up or you go down. There's no middle. Like you can't stay here. There's nothing.
Yep. Exactly. So you guys can find Chris Smith and Hayley Brodeur both on LinkedIn. Follow them for terrific stuff about AWS and about Alsyio and about all the stuff that they're learning and doing. And we'll get them back on a future show. So thanks for joining us. Apologies for the tech problems at the top, but that's on us to build a better workflow.
We'll have AI fix it next time. All right.
It didn't work, and we didn't use any AI. So
exactly.
Cheers.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks. And I would add, right, that one is that people that if you need 100% accuracy, maybe AI isn't the right tool.
Yeah.
And also you have to recognize that humans make mistakes too. So if you have a human doing it today,
speak for yourself.
That's a good point. But most humans, except Mary, aren't 100% accurate. So you have to kind of take that into account when you're evaluating the system. I think too many people are expecting 100% accuracy, and then they go, well, have a human do it. Well, a human's not 100% accurate either, except for Mary.
Right.
So
it's like the cars. I'm happy in one of the self-driving cars, like much lower level of error.
Yeah, no, I mean, Chris is still going to drive the Porsche. I'm going to still drive a Corvette. We're not driving.
So if you guys remembered earlier, I talked about one of the big challenges is customers need to move from POC to production. So if anybody has actually ever tried to write OAuth 2 around an agent, it's not an easy task. So what Agent Core allows you to do is it's a runtime. So it is serverless, so you can run your agents. It doesn't require that you modify the code, except for you may have to add one decorator for an agent. But it allows you to run agents and MCP servers in a very scalable, secure platform. So it automatically wraps OAuth or SigV4 around your agents, gives you the ability to incorporate memory if you want, gives you the ability to incorporate Lambda or external APIs as tools. So it has a number of primitives, we call them, 7 of them. You can mix and match and use whichever ones you want. But the The purpose of Agent Core is to enable you to go from concept into production very easily. It's the easy button for moving agents into production. Love to chat more about it when we get a chance, but that's the high level.